said you got into something.
Oh, okay. How was it? Let's get like 3 feedback. Give me the real feedback. Rudy.
I think the first time I tried it was the West Legon branch.
Sure.
It was good. The East Legon I tried last 2 weeks. They hadn't arranged it very nicely. They seemed like they switch and shift, so it was like they're just throwing it on there. Then and they didn't even know the flavors, and there are no flavor labelings on it, so it was a bit hard to tell what was what.
Sure.
But otherwise, it's good. The shawarmas are really good with the kebab pepper and whatnot.
All right, one more person.
The bad ones are out to let me know.
Joshua.
Well, the first time I tried it, the flavor that really caught my eye was the whole one. It was really weird and nice. Like I'd never experienced it, so that was the mind-blowing aspect of it. Like,
Actually, I brought you guys some, so when we're done with it.
Alright, so can we get like one last person, then we start the kind of like the discussion. Anyone more person to give us feedback? Yeah, Gladys.
Yeah, actually, pancakes before, and I think that it was good, and their packaging is really amazing.
I guess
But I didn't hear any bad one. Or you guys don't know. Because I always say that criticisms are always good, because they help us also grow as a business. So it's important. Yes.
well, the last time I went was, I think it was the student.
Yeah.
It seemed like they hadn't done it well. Like, I tried.
The ice cream?
Yeah, I went for my normal flavor,
Okay.
and I was like feeling lumps of ice.
Ice in the
Flavoring wasn't mixed then.
Sure. Alright, cool. Because go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so I tried the one in Kumasi.
Yes.
And waffle wasn't the best.
Sure.
The ice cream, the only nice flavor was the vanilla, the rest wasn't.
Yeah. Do you know the good thing is that we closed the commercial shop. Yes, because sometimes we'll tell the story, but sometimes expanding too fast also brings about some of these issues in terms of oversight.
Thank you. So,
Okay, so I haven't tried this before. I mean, this was my first time hearing about it.
Okay, sure.
But then I put the poster on my WhatsApp status. And the feedback I got, some was good, but then, like you say, you wanted bad ones.
Yeah, sure.
There were some people who said that, well, they have nice ice cream, but their food is not nice.
Okay.
But then I've not had any food yet, so I'm just wondering what exactly they meant by their food is not nice.
Okay.
That's the feedback.
Because we just started selling food, so I don't know where exactly.
we'll start off by, this is Richard Sakyi, and he's the owner of Yah Company. And what we'll do is I will just let him tell us a bit about his background, education, and then what was his inspiration for actually starting this company.
Okay. Hi. I just want to be called Richard. I don't like my last name. I don't even like the name Mr. The title Mr. Richard. Well, let's say growing up, I lived in a household whereby every Sunday we were always given ice cream as a treat every Sunday. But one thing we realized was maybe getting a bucket of pan we were just tied down to 3 major flavors, and that had to be the strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate, right? So we were also of the view that how come there was this one, I don't know if you guys were around at the time, there was one called Funko. It was my favorite, but at one point they stopped production. So it just got boring as time went on when you always talk about strawberry, chocolate, vanilla. And I was like, when I grew up one day, I really want to compete with Funko and give people variety. And also make it, Funkies was there, but I thought Funkies wasn't quite accessible to most people in their community. So, fast forwarding to my college life, I used to work as an interlibrary loan assistant at Luther College. That's somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Iowa, USA. And as an interlibrary loan assistant, what we literally did was that we would order books from other universities. Those books were books we didn't have on campus. So we would also do the same for the other school or the other universities around. So I thought of it as using that as an opportunity to learn more about ice cream and how it was made. Even though I never had a practical experience, I think much of the knowledge I had was all theoreticized. So when I got done with university, I got a 4-month internship at a medical facility. So during my free time, I'll be driving around in Minneapolis to check up on the ice cream establishment. So I'll go to Cold Stone, there were some kind of like old establishments that nobody knows about. And then I'll check up with Baskin Robbins. And one thing I came to realize was the variety that it had, and how interesting going into an ice cream shop could be, just by the fact that, find kids coming around. And what really got me excited, you'd see kids, just on the class, trying to point out the various flavors that were available. So after that 4-month stint, it was during the time of the American economic crisis. So being a foreigner, and for that matter, let's say, I don't want to use the word black, it was hard getting work. So I decided that at one point, I was done with America. I decided to relocate back home. So I remember coming back to Ghana because I couldn't find work, and it had been almost 6 months since I had finished my internship. I became literally broke, So coming back to Ghana, I only had $300 in my pocket, and the car I was using, I left behind for somebody to sell, and then remit the money back to me. When I came back home, I realized that, my dad needed help at his water bottling place. I worked there for a while, and I realized that, no, this is not something I really wanted to do. So I ended up working at my mom's shop in Tudo. I don't know if anybody knows, where they sell shoes and stuff. So one thing I realized that when I started working there was the lack of customer service in terms of how people were treated when they came to work. People, not the employees, but in terms of the customers. When they come in, people wouldn't talk to them well and whatnot. So they realized, I started doing something different. And we realized changes in the sales. So I realized the one thing that was deficient in our society was customer service. So at one point in time, I came home really, really hungry. And back in the States, even though I had a theoretical aspect in my head, I would normally want to go out. I'll go out and buy ingredients in making ice cream. So I bought some of those ingredients. And being super hungry on that very day, I decided to mix up some things together and then put some ice into the blender, crush it up, and then drank it. And I felt it tasted good, And the next day, my brother returned from secondary school, and he's quite picky about food. He wouldn't even eat in the house. He'd go out to buy wachi or go out to buy food with his friends. So one thing I'll check from the glasses is that whether it was half full or was totally empty. And I would come back and it was empty. So whenever my friends came around, I would just be making it for them. So I remember one telling me, Richard, I think since you don't find anything like that in the country, why don't you run with it as a business? So with that, I developed a concentrate and started taking it to the bars and clubs around. So we went down to Labone, but whenever we went, people were like, because of the blender part, it's cumbersome, it's nice, but we don't want to work with it, and whatnot. So I was like, well, people have told me it's nice, but I haven't been able to make a CD out of it. So why don't I try out maybe going to a fair and see what kind of responses would be for me to learn, So I remember there was a children's park event. I think these guys didn't market it well, so very few people came. So we did our setup that very morning, and we were selling the product at 50 pesos. So people would come, sample and buy. And then those people would call their friends in, and then they would also come and buy. And we started realizing that people were actually coming. So at 8 a.m. we were selling it at 50 pesos. By 1 p.m. we were selling it for 3 cedis. Sorry. Yeah, so we realized the potential that, we could actually make money off it, And yes, even though the whole show, which ran for 3 days, was a loss to us, for me, it gave me the encouragement that there's a market out there for the product. And with hindsight, most bars and clubs that I thought would be taking it weren't going to take it. So I was sitting at home one Saturday morning and I decided, like, you know, where would be the best location to have a setup? I mean, where you could have people with an aspirational mindset, maybe a youthful crowd and whatnot. And I come up in new at the time, I think, like, fit within those parameters. So on Monday morning, I called a friend of mine and asked that, you know, I wasn't a good communicator back then. I still think I'm not, but then I think I'm doing my best now. So I decided that he leads me because I realized that most of the receptionists there were women. And he had a good thing with the ladies, so he knew how to get to them and then we get what we wanted. So he told him, I don't know why. So we went there, the very first time, we spoke to them, they wouldn't budge. I mean, it took us literally 3 weeks before the manager actually got out and said, you know, Richard, I feel my brain, I don't know if you guys all speak cheap, but, or you understand. He goes, Richard, I'm tired, you guys just go outside and go and set up. But one caveat to the story is that you guys don't have to bring in the blenders to make noise in the mall. You can bring speakers and whatnot. So, with my last $2,000 that I had made from selling my car, I imported these machinery, the slash machines from China. Not China, Taiwan. Because Taiwan and China are two different countries, right? And they brought it in by air. So that very weekend, my sister also called in her friends to come and assist us with selling. So we did our setup outside and then we started selling. I didn't know whether it was actually the girls that were bringing the people, you know, or was the product that was selling for itself, you know, because the girls really dressed on that day. They pulled in a lot of people, and then, well, the very first day, I think there's one thing I missed out. I think we hadn't tightened the screws properly, and so we poured in the first base, and then everything went out. So with the little that we had left, we actually sold and made some good, profit on it. That was about 400 Ghana. The next day we tripled that, and I still don't know up to now whether it was the girls or was it the real family. You know. The subsequent week, I went over to talk to the mall manager, and I told him how successful the event had been. And he was like, okay, sure. Then I'll give you another chance, you know, to come and sell. When I called the girls this time around, they were like, Richard, I'm busy, I can't come. This girl called me, I can't come. So I was like, I understand you all, it's not your thing, so I just go in there and sell. But this time around, he also gave me an inner part of the mall to sell. So we went there, and one friend of mine, she was the only one who was able to make it there. She was like, okay, you know what, let's just sample and let people try. Because you see a lot of people walking around, they didn't know what it was, so even though we had all the information there. And we actually named the product Cream Freeze, because it was more in between a milkshake and a normal drink. When I did my research, I realized that Starbucks at the time was doing something similar called Frappuccinos. But with Frappuccinos, you know, the average Ghanaian wouldn't be able to pronounce it, and it would be really tough with the tongue, you know. And I was like, you know, let's come up with a simpler name. So we ended up calling it the Cream Freeze. And we started something. Yes, we had people come through the door, come to us, try. Some people we had to actually pull them to try. Those who tried, some of them ended up coming out. So I remember at one point, I think for almost a month, we stopped. You know, because all the spots, and literally, let me say this, I think we actually got the space in the mall for free, you know, and I always say it is by divine intervention or something, because people were paying thousands of dollars just to sell. But I think the guy saw something in us that he felt like, hey, let me assist these guys to start something, you know. So fast forward, we started this. We had the whole mall booked up because all the exhibition spaces were all taken. And I met this girl in the mall at one time, and she just approached me and said, "Oh, excuse me, sir. Last weekend I was here with my friends. I told them about this drink you guys were selling, and we came around and you guys weren't there. So please make it a point to at least show up. Or if you're not going to show up, just tell us you're not going to show up." That's when I realized that, wow, we've actually gotten customers from this, right? And from that time onward, we decided that at all costs, at every point in time, we'll show up to the mall, even if we had to be outside in the rain, just sell to them. So I think after a year, the manager had seen that people would come around the machine and sell. So he decided to make it permanent. And so I think from 2014 till date, it's been a permanent fixture at the mall. At one point, I was standing there working when I think the guy from Pinocchio, the owner, Jean-Louis, approached me, and he was like, "Oh, excuse me," like he introduced himself, and then he told me he wanted to know if he could do a setup by ourselves. And I was like, that wasn't going to be possible because I know what kind of contracts these tenants have signed. And if they have any product that's competing with what we have, we will probably be booted out of the mall. So I've lived in West Legon for the last 15 years. So I remember that there was this shop just in the care. And I was like, I think I have a location that I think will work. So I called in a friend and asked him whether he was interested in partnering with me so that we go and then talk to the landlord and see if we could get the space. Yes, we did get the space. We went back to Pinocchio and we were like, oh, why don't you franchise your model? Because for me, I like Pinocchio ice cream, and it was like, sure, but you guys have to pay $350,000 if you have to franchise. I was like, where am I going to get that money from? So my partner at the time was like, so how are we going to do this? And I told him, you know what, let's just take the ice cream and develop our own what's the name? Should I call trading spot or our own ice cream joint? So we developed our own menu that included the smoothies, the sandwiches, and then the milkshakes. Yeah. One point I was sitting there, I was thinking, how come we always want foreign stuff in our country when actually you can look at the local things that we sell and improve upon the product and then market it. So I realized that, why don't we also sell ice cream here in Fula? And for those Ghanaians who want to do more aspirational, let's give them a funny name call it ice cream cake, corn smoothie, and then Fula millet smoothie. I don't know if you guys know what Fula is. Yeah. You don't know what Fula is. All right, so this is kind of like, I'm going to show you what it is. So it's kind of like this millet thing they make, and it's a little bit spicy. They add milk and sugar. So normally you see these ladies carrying it on their heads. So we decided to introduce it into the shop. So I think December 25th, we got everything started and we opened. And interestingly, we didn't make any noise, we didn't tell anybody, but we started seeing people streaming into the shop. And they started asking, what are you guys selling? And we told them, this is what we're selling. So we're selling ice cream or whatnot. And they were actually surprised to see the ice cream came fuller. And people started buying the ice cream came fuller, leaving the ice cream. But the kids would come in and buy the ice cream. I think it was during the time of Doomsday. And I don't know whether Doomsday was a fortunate incident or an unfortunate incident for us. Because, in the neighborhood, when the lights went off, those with generators would stay home. But those without would come into the shop, and then it gave them the opportunity to actually come charge their phones. And what better way of charging your phones than not buying it, which people ended up buying. So we exposed the business more out to people to understand what we were selling. And then by where it spread out. Unfortunately, the Dooms also created a lot of operational costs for us, but we were able to surmount it. In 6 months, we have been able to cover our costs and turn a profit. So that's how the first shop started. I don't know if you have any questions before I move on.
I think that's a very interesting. For this class, we basically are doing interesting projects, and we want to basically get a very good understanding how you're able to identify who the right customer is for the business. So looking at, for instance, let's say initially you spoke about doing a lot of testing. So you did some testing at home, you did one at the mall, and all of these things. How were you able to say, okay, this is the right customer, and this is the best product that I can use?
Okay, so with the cream freeze part at the mall, I think there's one part I left. We started distributing machines into the schools, right? We thought kids would be the ones to target, and we started going into schools, setting up machines for them. But Doomsday also became a problem, so we had to clear it out again. And we decided that cream freeze should be left in the mall. If we have to go out there to, let's say, West Legon to have a full-blown package, I think one thing we realized that West Legon is made up of, let's say, about And then the demography, it's interesting. You have a lot of students living there. It's an upper to middle income level neighborhood. You have a major road that connects to two major highways, also in the neighborhood. So you have people streaming too. So we realized that maybe the students were going to be the ones to come in, and also people in the community. Interestingly, we had we also thought, okay, there's Game Park close by, and there was the University of Ghana. We thought it would be mostly the students from University of Ghana, but no, it was actually the commuters, because in the evening, West Legon didn't have any kind of like restaurant, so they would stop by and come in, you know. And then some of the students who realized that we were still in high school would also call in their friends to come in and do whatever. So we realized that the students and the commuters were the primary matter. We didn't create it, but then by dint of the circumstances of where West is going, we realized that. But in the other locations, we realized the dynamics were a little bit different. I don't know if you want me to go in there. Okay. So we decided to go into a place called Tabora. When we became first, we had a chopped our first license. We decided, no, we should expand into neighborhoods that were quite similar to West Legon. So you had upper to middle income level groups. You had maybe a major highway running through that part of town and whatnot. But we were approached by a gentleman from Ghana, and he was like, "Oh, if you guys are looking for these locations, I think we will help you, because we've also started identifying certain brands that we want to partner with, and then work with them in setting up food joints in their location." So that's why you see KFC now partner with Shop and Starbucks, and we have also done the same. Initially, he was the one who recommended Tabora for us, and I was like, "Where's Tabora? I don't even know the place. I don't even know where it is." So he took us there, and I realized, it was a low to middle income neighborhood, and the only thing that was happening there was the major highway running through. So you'd have the let's say the working class folks close, and then they would come into bar. Then we realized that, no, this is not the best fit for whatever organization. And I don't know, for some reason, Tabora had the worst of all the power rationing schedule. When people would have lights turned on for maybe 6 to 6, they never had lights on these 4 days. So we decided that, no, this wasn't the best place. Then we went on to Junction Mall. Junction Mall, through some friendship with Ghana Limited, they recommended a spot. And we realized that during the Christmas period, that's when we set up shop. We made so much money that we had made in the 6 months of operating the West Legon branch. And for them, it was kind of like a pop-up shop for us to realize that this could be a good potential for us to operate the business for. After December, the whole mall went dead. But we had already signed on to the lease. So we were kind of like tied down. That was when we realized, we thought we were going into Spintex. But Junction Mall wasn't located at Spintex, but Nungwa. And Nungwa happens to be a low-income neighborhood. However, you have Sakumono on the other side. So the working class would also come in at night. And then on the weekends, the Nungwa folks and then the working class people will wake up for the numbers. So you see the numbers going up on the weekends. And then the sales being kind of like stable during the week. So that's one thing with that. So the money that was made from the Christmas period, we decided to invest into Tema. So when we opened Tema had the trappings of West Legon. And when we opened, we just did some little fun, and business started picking up. And some people also through word of mouth and talked to their friends about it. We also distributed some flyers, and we started operating. I know being in Accra Mall, it gave me so many opportunities to understanding how the mall system operates. People make a lot of money in Accra Mall, unless of course it's a product people don't usually buy, then you run out of the business. So when Kumasi Mall was introduced to us, we were like, oh yeah, we're going to sign up. So we ended up signing up, and I think it was the biggest mistake we made. Because I think we expanded too fast, and especially into a neighborhood that we didn't understand, or a part of the country we didn't understand. Because these guys came in with a whole fanfare that Kumasi, or we also thought that Kumasi being the only city with a mall in the middle part of the country would attract a lot of folks. But when we opened, yes, the numbers were amazing. I mean, the mall would see about 80,000 people a day. When school vacated, I mean, school reopened, the whole mall went. That's when we also realized that the neighborhood was actually an old, rich neighborhood. So all the young people who were supposed to have made the mall possible were probably grown and out of the community. And for the average folk to come into the Kumasi Mall, we realized that they needed at least 2 public transport stops before they would get there. So Kumasi Mall hasn't been doing too well. But one thing we learned was that from West Legon, in the evenings, people will still come in asking for food. You know, they would ask, don't you have rice? Don't you have rice? Don't you have jollof? And we told them, no, we only sell sandwich and it's food. But people are like that. And then I'm very good. You know? And I was like, you know what? You just try the food you're talking about. If it's something that you think will fill you up, why not? So those who ended up enjoying it because it was something they could go by just eating, you know. And they realized that, well, you could actually have a sandwich that's filling. You know, in this part of the world, sandwiches are not the main thing. We always think it's a heavy rice or whatever. That's supposed to fill you up. So it was perfect. So we realized that with the kind of rentals that Kumasi Mall guys were asking, it was necessary that we included food. Because we also sampled some people in the morning like, oh, now ice cream, can I speak to you a little bit? Yeah. I will translate that. Unya ice cream, unya jollof and our movie DDR, that could do ice cream there, any problem. You bet him up more. So literally, it says, oh, if you get your jollof or your fried rice to eat, and then you can come in for your ice cream. Of course, we'll always come in to bar. So those were the sponsors we had. So we realized that no, we needed to increase. And then so when we opened, we decided to. We had an old East Legon location, but they also had its issues, so we closed down. We realized that the fact that you're in East Legon didn't mean that you're going to be successful. Sometimes location really matters. So we happened to have ended up getting a new shop on the Lagos Avenue, and then we opened. The rentals in East Legon are also not cheap, you know. And we also observed that there were a lot of working class people in the neighborhood, because in West Legon, they commute to work, and when they are returning to back, over there in East Legon, you have a lot of workers running in from morning till 5 o'clock. So we're like looking at the rentals and looking at the dynamics within this small area. Why don't we also include the food bed? And we weren't going to expand on the food bed because we felt Yah should be a frozen treat shop. There are those who want to just have everything right there and not go out. So why don't you just grab them, buy everything, and then let them enjoy whatever we have to. So we decided to include the food. And interestingly, now the rice over there sells more than the shawarma. You know. Then we got a spot at the Spintex Road now, and that through the work of Sheldon and Professor. We felt like, oh, it's Spintex, but what we came to realize later on was that it's also a working class area. It's an industrial area. So we also needed to add food to it. And frankly, I think that's what has helped spread the business. It's actually through customer needs. And we responded to those customer needs. That actually helped us because the business system. But the Kumasi place, we just closed last 2 weeks. Because we are having too many challenges. The human resource in Kumasi was a little bit tough. It's different. Kumasi is a different market altogether. What you may enjoy, they don't consider it to be like the best and stuff. They enjoy their food. But there's also a youthful crowd that also enjoy these things. But the cost of operating in Kumasi is also a thing. So we decided to close that shop and open a shop across the street, which I think will serve the masses at least. So we would be able to have time to treat the customer the way we want. And we don't want the masses. At the end of the day, the little that you can serve and serve well with quality food, I think that would be the right way to go.
So, I mean, just to kind of touch on, we noticed that there's been a number of locations you had to open and close and open and close. If you had to, kind of build your business model again, what would you have done differently to avoid incurring such costs?
I think do more research. And
explain.
Yeah. before, you know, we are actually going to open our newest location on the Enusu, right? And I've actually had to take pains to go around to talk to the other food vendors who have been there for quite a long time to understand what these people want. I used to work with Pinocchio, right? But we stopped buying ice cream from Pinocchio. I forgot to add that. Because we had a little tussle and then we told them, no, we are ready to do everything ourselves. And so for that matter, we stopped taking from you guys. So that was far back as 2016. So we've been doing our ice cream ever since. From the information I gathered, the numbers at Pinocchio, I don't need to disclose that, it's dwindled a little bit for the food bit. But people still want their ice cream in Usu. The second thing is, we feel the ice cream cake and Fula have been major success stories at both the West Legon and the East Legon locations. We also got the opportunity to work with MTN Ghana. So we did a setup at the MTN head office. And it's the ice cream cake and Fula bit that they are buying the most. And on Fridays, they love the ice cream, so we give them the ice cream on Thursday and Friday. You understand? So for the working class, at least also gives you the insight on how much you're willing to spend. Well, those in the corporate world, they don't spend a lot, even though they are the same people who come into the shop to spend, let's say, 17 CDs on a pancake. When they are in their corporate institutions, they don't even want to spend 7 CDs or 10 CDs on the same item. So you need to understand the dynamic. The ones they are getting out, they're willing to spend. But if you are going to give it to them in their institutions, that is when they are going to, as much as possible, cut you down to get the best value from you. So that's it.
I think that's a very, very interesting insight. And I think, you should only think of the corporate like customer segment. We always think they have money to spend on all those things. But being able to identify that for instance, you're saying in a corporate, when they're in the office, they can buy a meal for less. They want to buy a meal for less than 15 cities or 20
less.
Or even less. But if they are out, let's say on going out to have fun, they're willing to spend hundreds of cities on some of these things. We'd also like to know, so if you look at, for instance, let's say, because typically when I think of ice cream, right, I think of children. Sure. How has that changed for you? Because you seem to speak a lot about working class and the corporate people. So it looks like your business has kind of shifted towards they being your customer segment and not the children.
Yeah. Well, as of now, I still don't understand. We thought we were going to have more kids coming with their parents, but we have more of the 18 to 35-year-olds actually being our primary customers. And I don't know whether it's because of the location of West Legon. I don't know. I don't understand. But maybe it's also the decor in the room. It feels more matured than the average, And I think it's worked well in our spectrum because they will still have the money to spend. The kids always will depend on their parents. So if your parent feels like they need to bring their child in, then that's up to them. But I think most of our offerings are actually catered to those people rather than what we anticipated. So I think it's the customers deciding stuff and not necessarily we trying to impose on them what they want.
So for instance, with East Legon, that's where you said there's a high cost high demand for food, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you do there?
So we decided to put ourselves in a box and not expand further. So it's primarily fried rice, Chinese noodles, what's the name? So there's this one we call the Senegalese burger. It doesn't look like any burger you can imagine. So it's primarily made up of potatoes, eggs, sausages, and other kinds of meat. And then you put it in the French bread, how do you call it? Baguette. You put it in baguette. So that's what people primarily buy in the shops. And it's a similar model as Tentex. So we realized that in those neighborhoods, those are the things that we do.
But why stick to those 3 meals? Why not a lot more options?
The thing being, we want to expand more on our frozen treats. And we don't want to push, we want people to know us for selling frozen stuff. So if it's an ice cream cake, that's what you come to. If it's, let's say, a slushy, which we call the American ice soda, because it's actually a slushy, but when we went to Kumasi, in order to get their brains on something exotic, we decided to call it American Ice Soda. You understand? But it's a general. Don't get it twisted, because I know people didn't do that. For instance, Dunkin' Donuts went into India and decided not to call their donuts donuts. So they changed the name totally in order for people to easily identify with it and feel that aspirational part that comes with edges and certain things from the show. So, yes, that's one.
So before we move into the question aspect, so one of the, at the stage that most of these business ideas, or should I say startups are, it's in customer development.
Sure.
Can you share, what is the importance of that in developing very good business models, and how, what are some of the advices you give them on?
I think the key thing is to listen to customers. That's the primary thing everybody needs to know. If you don't listen to your customers, they are the same people who bring you down. I remember we were using this generic type of boxes for pancakes and waffles. And I remember these 7-year-old and 10-year-old girls came in too much into the shop. They came with their uncle, who happens to be a very good friend, and he was like, they were like, "Uncle, but how come you have this ugly box sitting in here and you're trying to sell pancakes with it? Can't you go for something like that?" That's what actually spurred me on, like, you really need to go change the box, because if these kids are the ones telling you that you need to change the box, then you have to quickly work on it. So the very next week, I went online, looked for things people have done, and then we introduced the box. And I think listening to those two kids, realized how impactful that has been to the business. So irrespective whether it's a child, if it's an adult, always listen. Sometimes customers can be a little bit obnoxious, right? You understand? But when you have so many of them pointing to a specific problem, then I think it's a voice of reason, and you have to work on that. So that's one of the major things that I also think customer service. If you don't treat your customers right, they will never return to that favor. Always keep on the spot. And with what they said, I think we'll have to really go back and work on it. Because I think at Weston, we were sitting there, my partner and I, he's no longer there, so my ex-partner and I would always sit there. And when you don't smile at the customer, we force you to smile. You understand? We make you go in to open the gate for the customer. So for the early managers or the early or frontline workers, they were more in tune with what we wanted to achieve. But as the business expands, sometimes you have to hire people within the local area, and they lose sight of the whole objective of the business. Because for them, it's all about, I'm here to make my money and leave. So whether it's going to do well or not, they don't care. So we need to imbibe that whole culture of customer service. That I think will also help the business grow. So yeah, that's it.
So we'll just put it out there. If you have any questions or comments, suggestions, he's ready to answer them. Go ahead.
So it looks like you know your competitors in what they actually do. How are you able to get those things? Because then it's not something that's out there.
You know why I'm smiling? Because I knew that would be the first question that would come as a competitor, but I'm listening.
So it looks like you know your competitors.
Yeah.
So what they actually do, and even their figures and everything. How are you able to get it?
How am I able to get it? You know one thing, try to be nice to everybody. Whether it's the bus boy, when I say bus, like the waiter, or the owners themselves. And I happen to be friends with all these guys within that industry. And they will tell you whether business is going well, is doing well or not. They won't tell you actual figures. But for some reason you get to know, because unfortunately in Ghana, most employees talk a lot. You understand? They talk a lot. So when you're talking, how's work going? And they go, oh, this week we didn't sell at all. We sold 1,000 CDs. And you get to have that information. You understand? So it's important that, you get to know everybody in the business. Even though you are competitors, still remain as friends. You understand? And that will give you a better advantage in knowing what to do better or be ahead of the curve. Yes.
Thank you very much. It was really insightful. Right? My question is that, so when I hear about ice cream or this type of business, I always assume that price play a very key role in determining your customers or your location. But from your conversation, I didn't really hear price coming in aside the also situation. So do you think price determined your customers, or is price really relevant?
Well, I think price is important. Like one of the reasons why we left Tabora was the fact that people would come in and they'll be like, oh, you know what? I want half scoop of 2 different flavors as 1 scoop. Is that possible? And you're like, no, it can't be, because once it's just a scoop, that's the cost. And they were like, oh, it's too expensive. 8 CDs, 7 CDs. No, that can buy you 7 fun ice pieces. So once you start hearing that, you tell yourself you are in for disaster. You understand? And we realized that in certain locations it wouldn't work. But interestingly, if there was a mall in that location, let's say Tabora, they wouldn't have a problem buying it for 70, because in their head, the psyche is things in the mall are supposed to be expensive. But if it's a standalone, that's totally different. They come in complaining. And if you want it's not, let's say, a foreigner standing there, they can vent all their anger on that customer and tell them how they feel about the product. You understand? So for people in the lower income groups, I think being in the mall helps them serve their needs or our needs as a business, rather than being a standalone in those communities. You understand? But if you're in the middle upper income, they don't have a problem. Even if it's 10 CDs and they know they are getting something good, they don't have a problem. So price sometimes determines, but in totality, I think you have to still deal on your customer service and then really attend to the location you are setting your stuff in. If you know you are not going to buy your thing, don't even move there. You understand? Or even if you have to do the ice cream bit, realize that in the lower income neighborhoods, they buy the ice creams the most. They come in and buy 1 scoop, 1 scoop, 1 scoop. Even though it's a little bit expensive for them, they still don't have a problem, because they for them feel it's a treat. But in the upper to middle income people, they would rather go in for the ice cream cake, the smoothies and whatever. So it's kind of like an ironical situation. So, yeah. I hope I answered your question.
So throughout your presentation, which was an amazing story, you kept mentioning that we should listen to our customers, to your customers, to our customers. But then what is the borderline? Because sometimes your customers can drive you away from your vision. So you started this with the aim of creating new flavors, ice cream shops, frozen stuff. And then maybe you opened up in a new community and then no one is buying your ice cream and all they go for is the full part. Like, sometimes your customers can drive you to change your price because they're like, it's too expensive, and then because you want to listen to your customers, you cut down your price, and then they might even stop buying. Like, so many factors can come into play and destroy the entire vision or move you away. So what do? Like, do you just move with the customers and say, okay, my customers don't want this, so let me throw it away, or you stick to your vision?
Okay, so that's a good question. One thing is, we realize that most people come in looking for food irrespective. So the whole idea is just for us to put ourselves in a little box with regards to the food. The thing is, once they come in to ask for food, the next thing is that they want a beverage associated with it. And we don't, even though there's a whole, let's say, carbonated drink fridge sitting out there, we don't recommend that to them. We recommend, actually, we pair the foods up for them. So you'd have, let's say, maybe a smoothie with a sandwich, or maybe a milkshake with a Senegalese burger, or what. Oh, let me try that. I think it's good. You understand? Once you're able to get them into the food, you can pull them to try the other things that they have never been used to. So that's what I think has been the good thing for us. So we don't feel like we have to move outside of our core vision, but stick within it and then improve upon it and work with it. That's it. Do you understand? Okay.
Thomas, and then sorry, Mohammed.
So like just back to the question again, I feel I also got some insights from what you were saying. So in a case where customers couldn't afford it in Tabora, you had to stick in line with what you wanted to do and close the shop down.
Yeah.
But then in other areas, when you see that you can blend it like you are doing, you do that to.
So I didn't hear that last one.
In other areas, when you feel that you can blend it, you do that to gain customers.
Exactly.
So it's like a mix.
Exactly.
Cynthia.
You know, when you take Junction Mall, for instance, if I have to look at what Junction Mall was offering to us, and then what West Legon was offering. When you look at the rentals, right, West Legon was doing less than 10% of our, in terms of the cost of being the rentals, was offering us less than 10%, right, which was astronomically good. Junction Mall, on the other hand, was doing 32%. So in certain times of the month, we'll be breaking even, making losses, and doing extraordinarily well. But we realized that for Junction Mall, there's still a good market there, even though the cost of running the place wouldn't make it ideal for us to continue the business. So we decided that at the end of this year, this part of the year, we would rather reduce the store size and rather locate outside to reduce our cost. So currently we set up a food kiosk outside in the mall. So at least we can cater to the non-existent ice cream vendors around. Those who want ice cream in the mall. Because when they come, during the Christmas period, the sales are astronomically good. But after that, everything just tapers off and it remains stagnant. So we just convinced them that it would be best located outside of the mall arena. So that would also keep us in business for the long term to come. So we feel doing that has reduced our cost. And then now, even though people who were existing customers don't know where we are at now, we have also created a new customer base and we can see the sales picking up. Even though everything dropped, we've seen things go up again. So we feel being at Junction Mall is a good decision, even though it will come with its challenges. So that's how we work things out to be. Yeah.
So we'll take like 2 more questions. And for time's sake, when we're done, you'll be around for a little while, then you can talk to me. So Ruby and then
So one thing we learned in class is the importance of teamwork and working with people. You mentioned that your old partners know your partner. You don't have to tell us what happened, but how could that have been mitigated? What advice would you give us on working with teams and working with friends especially? And 2, how do you manage all these numerous stores?
Sure. All right. Thanks. Well, my ex-partner was a very close friend of mine in school, and we always felt that hey, once we have something going back, I went to school with him in the States. That's where we met, you know. So we always wanted to do business together. So when I started the shop at West Legon and he coming forward, for me, we felt everything was cool. But in the long run, we realized that we all have our different aspirations and goals. Some people are in for the short-term gain, others are in for the long term. So for him, as of now, I don't know, but maybe I think he felt he wanted to do something on his own to at least see what he can do just by himself, and it's fair. But I think for partnerships, don't expect partnerships to be perfect, because I always say something, even for P squared, for twins, identical twins or whatnot, they can even split up. But I think it should be an amicable split in partner with your friends or partner with somebody. But in the immediate term, before you start any business, make sure you set out everybody's what's the name? What do I call it? Expectations. The parameters within which or duties everybody's supposed to get themselves into before you start a partnership. They can be amazing, yet at the end of the day, if it doesn't go well, it can be one of the worst experiences you want to go through. In terms of managing the other locations, you always have to hire competent people who have already been in the industry. So when he left, because he was managing one aspect of the business, we were able to replace him with somebody who had worked for, I don't know if you know the shop called The Moose. It's So it's either you poach to get somebody you think you can work with, or maybe within the whole team that you've developed from time past, you can actually call on some of them to take up that mantle to take over the business. So as it stands now, there's this guy who does the general management, and then there are the managers we started with who really understand what we are about, who head the other shops. So that's how we've been working.
So more or less at the sole owner.
Yes.
Alright. So okay. So from your presentation, you stated that you guys have expanded to various locations. So my question is, have you ever considered like a movable space, like how an ice cream truck moves around? So access locations where you can't really get a space.
Yeah. You know, we've thought about all of that, and well, I read a lot, watch a lot of documentaries on YouTube on what the, let's say, established brands are doing. So I remember there was this kid who had actually done what you were talking about, and for him, they were either a miss or a hit. You understand? And for me, missing and hitting at every point in time shouldn't be something I would want to do. I would rather want to look for a location where people can easily identify with and become a place where people can hang out and then come in. So for us, it's something we can look at, but for now, it's not something on our radar. But if somebody here wants to do it, why not? The business is open. I always say we're open, and especially for the youth, I feel it's something people would want. If they want to franchise some aspect of the business, down the line we'll be open to it. And then if they have concepts that we can share with us, making sure that we can expand the reach of ice cream to various homes in Accra, why not?
So what are the next steps for So what does the future look like?
How does the future look like? Okay, well, so we're thinking about opening the Osu shop, right? And then sometime next year, I want to open one close to the University of Ghana, that's at the Pentagon area. So those are the two major things. And if Ashesi was also one that, why not? Yes. Yeah, so I think those are the things we have in mind.
So the last question.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, apart from word of mouth and your prime locations, which gave your customers, how else were you able to get them to come to you?
Yeah, well, I've been a bad nut at social media. You know, social media, I think, presents itself as the biggest opportunity for us. But because we've been too focused on expanding and using the same model to replicate the business, we just had, what's her name, Nanama Magvan, do some little stints for us, and we've come to realize its potential. So we've started investing more into the social media bit. Well, I'm still young, but I still act like I'm a good person sometimes when it comes to social media. I think it's good, but I hardly would spend my time on social media. But with her being in place to actually show us the potential, I think it's worth the investment, and going on from next year, we're going to put more resources into marketing ourselves better.
Yes. So we will take a comment from someone. So
Sure.
So just to sort of tie what we are doing and what we are doing. I'm hearing that we really need to speak to the customer, and I'm hearing that speaking to the customer is not just about having a conversation with someone, but it's a lot of things. I hear you say that you actually started customer exploration back in the US when you were a student and working in the libraries. That is when the exploration actually started. So if someone is starting their business now, it's not a matter of starting exploration now and thinking that they are going to finish exploring now. And if they realize that they need to work with some speed to get started, then it means that they really need to double their efforts, maybe quadruple their efforts to get a lot of information to be able to do some of the things that you have done. With social media, which is one of the things that you haven't, do you have a clear plan as to how you are going to leverage that?
Well, since I can't be an expert on everything, I think sometimes it's best to buy knowledge, right? And for that matter, I think we're about to engage a company in creating or building a trajectory for us and understanding where we can take the business onto from our social media bit, and then take it up from there. I always say something. You can't have knowledge in everything. So if you're deficient in one, always get that thing on board to help you move on. And that's what my partner was great too. When you look at it from that, I think he added so much to the business, right? And I think knowledge is always something everybody should desire to go on for, even if you don't have it. So I think buying or asking for something, or how do I do it? Outsourcing is always a good way to go when your business begins to grow and you see its benefits. Yeah.
So if you stick around for a little while, hopefully maybe a bit longer next time, and just get what you say.
Thank you for everything.
And thank you. Okay, maybe she wants to take it.
Yes, I'm taking it.
I would also like to say a big thank you for you guys having me. You know, on my first week, I thought I was going to have a lecture. I was going to lecture by a presentation. And I had this on the board, like, wow, I always hated having lecture presentations when I was in university. And I was like, God, what's it going to be? Because after, I got done with university like 10 years. And I hated presentations. So I think this has also afforded me the opportunity to realize that I can actually speak better than I thought. And please, one last thing I need to tell the students here. Please, if you guys have an idea and you feel you need to work on it to start a business, don't let anything stop you. You understand me? Don't be afraid. Whatever your parents may say, don't let it stop you. If you have any form of support elsewhere, let those people support you. Even if it's your friends, some of them they don't understand what you are about. You understand? So your friends will be like, it might not work, or why are you wasting your time? Why don't you go for a job or whatnot? If you understand where you're going, make sure you take that path. Secondly, don't be afraid of failure. If you check from my experiences, we've closed shop, we've opened shop, we've closed shop. But it's a lesson. You learn along the way. It involves a lot of money. But then now we are mitigating certain risks. After we had learned so much, you don't have to be here to spend so much. You can actually reduce cost by doing this. So please, don't let the word, actually failure is a good thing. It's good to fail, to learn. So you guys, the world is big. There are so many opportunities around. We sit down and say there aren't that many jobs. No, that is why you're in school. School is not for you to go and work for people. It's for you to solve problems around you. It's supposed to make you think. Think outside of the box. There are so many opportunities. Tap into it, and God will help you move up your potential. So that's all.